2 weeks ago, the world breathed a collective sigh of relief as the great garbage man in the sky was finally summoned to come and collect this clapped out old rubbish. Yes, the Switch 2 is finally within our grasp, and though the full specs have yet to be confirmed, we can at least now assume that Nintendo will at some point soon have a machine out that can actually run the eShop storefront at more than 5 frames a second. I mean, honestly, not being able to run its own game shop without significant lag is such bad capitalism. It's like Tesco making you walk over hot coals every time you try to buy beans. It's utterly baffling then that this news correlated with capitalists getting a bit spooked, with Nintendo's stock value plummeting by as much as 7% the very day after the announcement, which analysts have blamed, at least in part, on the new machine's perceived lack of innovation. In short, Nintendo are playing it safe. Although the day before, immediately after the reveal trailer, VGC were reporting that Nintendo's share price was at a 52-week high, which their analysts attribute to the fact that the Switch 2 is a conservative update that just focuses on refining a proven design. In short, Nintendo are playing it safe. I don't know, I'm thinking maybe the stock market is about as useful as goat intestines when it comes to trying to determine anything, apart from the flow of shit. But listen, it doesn't matter what the markets think, it doesn't matter what anyone thinks, the Switch 2 is going to be a big success. People bought a new Switch that was almost exactly the same apart from a nicer screen. People bought a new Switch that dropped its most signature feature, you know, the thing where you plug the thing into the TV. And people will definitely buy the new Switch with magnet actuated Joy-Cons, redesigned controls, a new chipset with 3 times the RAM, Hall effect sticks, possibly according to rumours. There's no question that this thing is going to be, like its predecessor, one of the best consoles of all time. A continuing refinement of design principles that Nintendo have been toying with from the DS through the Wii and Wii U right up to now. I honestly see those machines as one big through line that gets us to the Switch, and it doesn't surprise me that the Switch 2 doesn't innovate too much beyond its predecessor's basic form, because it kind of feels like that is the ultimate Nintendo machine now. This is now the physical form that Nintendo's overall proposition takes, and unless games somehow radically change in the next couple of years and they invent holodecks or something, I fully expect it to be the form that Nintendo consoles take as long as there are consoles. And the only surprising thing about the Switch 2 is that it's taken this long to arrive. However you slice it, the OG Switch is astonishingly underpowered. It always has been compromised, and that's not a criticism. It has to be compromised in some way to work as a handheld hybrid. It has to be portable. It has to be able to run games while sipping insignificant amounts of power, like 6 watts. A PS5 probably consumes 10 times that just on the title screen for Skyrim. The OG Switch, as unfit for purpose as it now may be, was an engineering marvel, but you know, so was the Ford Model T, and I wouldn't want to take that up the A1. For years now, it has been the worst place to play third-party games, and not even the best place to play its own exclusives, for reasons that I'm not going to get into because Nintendo will get mad at me, but suffice to say, there's a lot of naughty people out there playing Tears of the Kingdom at 60 FPS, and they're not doing it on sanctioned hardware. So the Switch 2 is late, and given that it's subject to the exact same compromises as the original machine, the hardware is already going to be out of date as soon as it hits. There's no doubt it'll be a significant step up, but as a home console, it's not going to be competing in pure performance terms with the Series X or PS5. Which doesn't matter, because the most significant development in the last 8 years is not the 9th generation of consoles, it's not ray tracing, it's not the mass adoption of SSDs, it's this. This certification program of Steam Deck compatibility has fueled a new paradigm that every game is a handheld game if you want it to be. In the days of the Game Boy, there was a hard separation between what constituted a handheld game versus a full-fat home console or PC game. A whole different set of expectations and considerations afforded to each. And that's not to say that handheld games couldn't be rich with depth and complexity, or even visual splendour of course, but there was always an understanding that handheld consoles were sort of like the USS Defiant compared to the Enterprise, you know? She can hold her own in a skirmish, but she doesn't have the resources for a full mission portfolio. Sorry, I'm not supposed to talk about Star Trek. The OG Switch popularised the idea that there doesn't have to be a hard line between telly games and welly games. By heavily featuring the universally popular Skyrim in early promos, the Switch absolutely sold us all on the pitch that, oh my god, I never have to leave my favourite games at home. I can go back to the rents for Christmas and not have to spend my evenings actually talking to them. I can just carry on with the Skyrim save I have at home, etc. It's a win-win, whether it's your house, or the bus, or McDonald's, or the sports bar at Victoria Station, your games are there with you, always. Even a crap version of The Witcher 3, if you want. I mean, it's the worst possible circumstances in which to play The Witcher 3, but you can still do it if you want to. And then the Steam Deck came along and said, hey man, I've got seamless cloud saves and better gear than the average laptop. This was the same Games Anywhere proposition, but uncoupled from a single piece of hardware. You could have the full, uncompromised Skyrim or Witcher 3 or even Cyberpunk 2077 experience at home, and then take a miniaturized version of that same playthrough with you on the road. If you have the hardware, it's the best of all worlds. Xbox's xCloud now offers roughly the same experience, albeit via very different means, and with its own sets of pros and cons, but it works. The upshot is now, in 2025, games are just games. They're not handheld games and home console games and PC games and smartphone games. They're just games, and deck verification is something that a significant number of consumers pay attention to. The system isn't perfect, but you can generally rest assured that a game will run nicely on your handheld Steam machine as long as it has that green tick. It inspires buyer confidence, and it's becoming an ever more important certification to get. Games are advertised on their deck compatibility. Users get angry if verification isn't forthcoming. It helps with discoverability on the Steam storefront, which is a tough nut to crack for every publisher. Deck verification isn't a make or break factor by any means, but it's a very desirable thing to have. Not to mention the fact that anecdotally, a lot of game devs have Steam Decks and are personally invested in making them work on the thing. And the basic considerations that make for a good experience on Steam Deck are more or less the same as they will be on Switch 2. Enough scalability to run on lower powered hardware, smoothly, without looking too pony, with readable text on smaller screens, and tuned for handheld controls. This is the world that the Switch 2 is being born into, a significantly different one than the original machine, where there is a strong precedent for full-fat games to go with minimal fuss or compromise. This can only help the new machine, and I suspect it will be a major factor in the console's third-party support. Between the two of them, Valve and Nintendo have done more to advance the cause of quality gaming on the go than any other platform holders. Going forward, the games industry obviously needs to continue making good games, worthy games, prestige games, and it will, but it also needs to make these experiences accessible to the widest range of circumstances and budgets, which means accommodating for all lengths of commute, all sizes of screen, and all hardware budgets, modest or grand. And holding on to this relatively new precedent that every game from Doom 64 to Crysis, from Half-Life to Cyberpunk 2077 can be played wherever you need to be, is a sustainable, no-brainer way of ensuring that. Switch 2 isn't just a new Mario Kart box, it's an important moment for the entire industry, whether you're a Nintendo fan or not. So it's a net win for everyone, and it fixes the biggest shortcomings of a hugely successful machine. And you can't say fairer than... Looks like it's still got digital triggers. Forget it. Forget everything I just said. They've it again. I'm not buying one. You need proportional control to operate brakes and a throttle effectively. I'm sorry. Driving games are out of the equation on this. Oh, Jesus wept. That only matters for hardcore racing sims. No. Is Grand Theft Auto a hardcore racing sim? Is Sleeping Dogs a hardcore racing sim? Is Red Faction Guerrilla a hardcore racing? You can't drive with that.